Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 460 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Ayalon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and an author. Our fifth book just came out. It's called Perseverance and How to Be a Great Fraternity or Sorority Alumnus. So go and pick up that book on Amazon or Barnes & Noble today. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring college students together. Fun fact, I am a huge fan of the television show The Office and also The Tudors. So when I had a conversation with our next guest on Instagram, I knew immediately that she would be such an incredible guest on our show because it gives our college student listeners the background on what it takes to create a hit show. It's definitely not an easy process, but we are super fortunate to have somebody on the Fraternity Foodie Podcast today that is going to break it all down for us. So buckle up for a great interview ahead. Teri Weinberg is a former NBC Entertainment Executive Vice President who oversaw all aspects of NBC Entertainment scripted development and current primetime programming in 2007, then launched her own production company. It's called Yellow Brick Road in 2010 with a 2-year first look deal with NBC Universal. At the conclusion of that deal, Teri would then independently produce and consult for MTV. Teri then partnered with Golden Globe, Emmy Award-winning actor and producer America Ferrera in 2016 with a 4-year first look deal with NBC Universal, and since has returned to independent producing. She is the co-executive producer of the Peabody, Golden Globe, and Emmy Award-winning show The Office, which has also received 2 Television Critic Association Awards, multiple WGA Awards, and a Screen Actors Guild Award. And she also served as executive producer of Ugly Betty, which is a winner of 2 Golden Globe Awards, an Emmy nomination, a Peabody Award, and a Screen Actors Guild Award. In addition, Teri was the executive producer of the Golden Globe nominated The Tudors. And I tell you what, she was nominated for 2 Emmys in July of 2007, as both The Office and Ugly Betty were both nominated as Outstanding Comedy Series. Welcome to the show, Teri.
I'm exhausted.
You shouldn't be. You have such a great resume of shows. I'm jealous.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Listen, I've had the good fortune of surrounding myself by some of the most brilliant people and some of the nicest people in our industry. So I'm the grateful one.
Yeah, that's always the case. I mean, we really depend on our team to make just wild dreams come true, and it has for you. And so that's just absolutely incredible. I want to talk about The Office first because I know all of our listeners are just very familiar with the show. They all love it. The first season of the show was the one that was most based on the British version of The Office. But what's interesting about the show is that initially the critics really didn't like it. And then from that point, after that first year, Michael all of a sudden becomes a much more optimistic and a much more likable character. So I'm wondering, how did you deal with the critic feedback initially when you got it, when it wasn't everything that you expected it to be? And then how do you ultimately decide to make that change with the main character of the show?
Well, not only did the critics not like us when they screened the pilot, but they called us things like painfully unfunny, a gross miscalculation. We were doomed from the start. Not only was it, going to be painful to get through 6 episodes, but what torture it would be if they were given 22, let alone multiple seasons. So, listen, you take all of that with a grain of salt. You go into these things with your purest intentions. We loved the British version. And, it's something that you go into knowing that you are going to potentially be battered around by the press. But, they had seen the first episode. The first episode was really the one episode that was taken from the UK series. And then we started to just kind of find our own footing. We'd only received a 6-episode order, which was 5 episodes plus the pilot. So we just said, listen, let's just stay the course. Let's continue to make the show that we all believe in, that we love, and let's make it for us, our office family. And, you know, we were so proud that in the event of that, you know, we would live and die from the beginning to that very last, you know, potentially 6 episode. And Steve Carell had not seen any of the British version. So he came in with just what he was, what his own take on the character was. And so, you know, as he started to discover the character, he just brought in his own instincts. And so over time, you know, Steve is one of the nicest people you will ever meet. There is a deep sweetness that just lives in him. And so I think as he started to play with the character, the essence of who Steve is started to come through. And so, you know, from a critic standpoint, you know, we are in the most subjective industry in the world. And so you just stay connected to the work and you trust your instincts. And most importantly, you listen to the audience.
That's really, really good advice. No matter what you're doing, just listen to the audience and then adjust from there. They are the end user. And so I think that's super important. Even when we think about the presentations that we do on college campuses, you know, it certainly wasn't perfect. I mean, my first presentation did not go necessarily the way that I expected it to go.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of trial and error and figuring out what jokes work, what jokes don't. And the only way that you can do that is with getting at bats, essentially trying it
That's
out
right.
and then listening to the feedback. And that's, I think, kind of the, you know, the way that we've been able to have the success that we've had is by really enabling the audiences to give us feedback in real time at the end of each presentation on their phones. And then we comb through that and then we make adjustments and then we perfect what it is that we're doing. But you really got to have a way to get audience feedback and make corrections. Otherwise, there's just no way to create the success that you ultimately want. So I think that's a great lesson.
But you have to take yourself back now. We're in
Mhm.
2005.
Yeah.
So there's no Twitter, there's no TikTok, there's no
Mhm.
Instagram, there's no social media like that. And so discovering shows was a whole different, you know, experience. And until we landed on Apple, on iTunes, is when that kind of hidden younger demographic found us. And that's when the show really started to take flight. And
Yeah.
that could be a whole different podcast.
Yeah, that's a great point. That is really, really great point. Yeah, getting access to the right audiences is certainly something that worked for you. So it was a combination of things
Mhm.
that made this into what it was or what it is today.
Yeah.
And you know, you also served as executive producer of Ugly Betty. This show won 2 Golden Globe Awards. I mean, incredibly successful. And what I realize about this particular show is that it seems like the cast and the family at Ugly Betty, they all seem extremely close. So I'm wondering from your perspective, do you think that there's an opportunity for a reunion in the future? They've been talking about that for a while.
Yes. We are a very close family. I mean, just like The Office.
Yeah.
Every show that I have, like I said, have been blessed to be a part of, we have all become the fabric of each other's lives. So we've seen babies born, marriages, divorces, you know, you name it, you know, and life has carried on. You know, I met America when she was 20, and to see her grow. I mean, she's 40 years old now, and over the
Hmm.
course of 20 years,
Hmm.
finding her voice, becoming a mom, becoming a voice of a generation, now being you know, she's an Oscar nominee, you know, in a $1 billion movie. But most importantly, they're all good people. And so, yes, we've stayed very close and have stayed connected over the years and have talked about, you know, an Ugly Betty movie. What would that look like?
Hmm.
And ways that we can continue to, you know, honor the series, you know, keep our family together. There's a few little scenarios being talked about right now. So I would say stay tuned.
The teaser. We're gonna have
I'm
to stay tuned. There it
gonna have to
is.
leave you with something.
Well, the fans would love to see it. I'll just tell you that. So that's really, really great. Now, you're also the executive producer of the Golden Globe nominated The Tudors, which is just one of my favorite shows. I just absolutely loved everything about it, the scenery, the acting, the historical content that is really based on the life of Henry VIII. And you obviously wanted to create soap opera-like drama in the show in order to keep the attention of the viewer. So, how do you decide how much history to incorporate into the show in order to keep the historical historians happy versus the drama that you need to create in or invent really in order to keep viewers coming back and watching the show?
I mean, listen, Henry VIII's life was a soap opera.
True.
But I would say it was one of my favorite shows too. I loved being a part of that show. It was the most incredible journey and development experience. And, Bob Greenblatt, who was president of Showtime, at the time was such a huge champion of the series. And Michael Hurst, if you're familiar with his work, we met him after he had just written Elizabeth. And, he's a avid historian. He loves historical world, and he's very well versed. And like any series, you want compelling, dimensional, grounded characters. That is what brings audiences back. And our approach with the Tudors was, imagine Henry VIII in Entourage.
Yeah.
So it was, platforming the series in truth while embellishing the relationships. So much of it was steeped in the history. And again, that was thanks to the brilliant mind of Michael. And, he was a real study of the classics. So he came with an incredible amount of education and knowledge of Henry's life. We produced 4 seasons, 38 episodes, and Michael single-handedly wrote every episode. And one of the decisions that we made to sort of modernize the series was, you'd have to look really closely, but the decisions we made with costuming and production design made certain situations feel more modern. For example, we dropped the necklines of the female characters. We made them feel a little bit more vivacious and sexual, whereas they were very buttoned up and high collared.
Hmm.
Their behaviors, we got to see Henry play tennis, or things like that with the men of his court. And so we just sort of modernized those relationships by very much holding true to the historical timeline of his life.
I love that. I love just kind of listening in on only what you would know as an executive producer in terms of those changes that you made it to be more relevant today.
Yeah.
And clearly you succeeded because this is a very binge-worthy series to watch. So I would suggest anybody who's not seen The Tudors, I tell you what, I'm hanging on the edge of my seat every single episode. I can't wait to watch the next one. And I don't know, maybe just as a fan of history, for me, this was the show that I got really, really enamored with. And my wife and I just absolutely love it. So really, really
Oh,
great
I'm so
job.
glad. Thank you for that. That's so nice
Yeah.
to hear,
Oh,
because it
it's
was made with a tremendous amount of love. We shot it in Ireland. I spent a lot of time there. In fact, I ran from the office, which we shot in deep in the North Valley. We were shooting Ugly Betty at Raleigh Studios in Hollywood, and I was getting on a plane to go to Ireland to shoot the Tudors. So it was a busy time in my life.
oh my goodness, I can only imagine. I mean, you've done so much. I'm wondering for all the students who are listening that are interested in television production and are looking to create these kinds of shows and ideas. I'm wondering, as a former NBC Entertainment executive vice president who develops all of this programming, and you did that for 3 years, how demanding and how stressful is a job like that?
This podcast is not nearly long enough to answer that question, but I would say that that was probably one of the most mentally and physically challenging times in my professional life. The work never ends. Each day brings an amazing amount of new experiences that, really truthfully requires a very steady, confident, measured hand. I'm not a yeller. I don't overreact. And I really do enjoy problem solving. And, being in positions of leadership, that comes with an incredible amount of, responsibility. And so I do wish that I would have slept more and allowed for more balance in my life. But, in those positions, you have to trust your teams. You have to trust the process. You have to honor the creative people and the writers that you are bringing into your network to tell their stories. And, you have to, the best advice I ever got was Kevin Riley after he left being a president of the network. And he said, Teri, the work will never end. You just have to decide when you're going to end the day.
Mm. Really, really good feedback. I like that a lot. And man, I can only imagine the kind of stress that you were under. Because then in 2010, you decided to launch your own production company. It's called Yellow Brick Road. Give us your vision for this production company. How is it different from all the other production companies that are out there?
For me, it was, my vision is always to follow my gut and hold true to the types of stories that I want to tell or be a part of. And I think, and representation is clearly what drives me. It's always been a priority for me very early on in my career. And, Ugly Betty is a true example of that. Betty Suarez was the first Latin lead on television. The Suarez family, really opened our eyes to the immigrant experience. And, Betty's nephew, Justin, was an adolescent exploring his sexual orientation. And he came out in season 4. Rebecca Romaine played a trans character. And we really had, I think, one of the most diverse casts on television. So as a producer and a content creator, first of all, we have to entertain our audiences. That's our responsibility. But we can also do that through the lens of, types of lenses and genres that can be diverse in and of themselves. But for me, it has to start with a feeling and a mission to leave the audience moved and feel respected and give them characters and ideas and stories that they can hang on to. And most importantly, that they can see themselves seen and be a part of. So I think sort of the bottom line would be, our world is very diverse, and I think our storytelling must be. And so for me, it's really trying to provide a platform for marginalized communities and underserved voices to have their place, in the world on larger platforms.
That's why you're so successful. It's that diverse storytelling combined with your ability to do problem solving, like you talked about before. When you have those two things, you can accomplish anything.
Yes,
And I just think it's phenomenal. I'm just in
thank
awe.
you.
I'm just absolute awe. So, if you were talking to a college student that wants to get into television production, what is your advice to these college students?
First and foremost, you better love what you do. You have to wake up in the morning with that feeling in your gut that says, I have to do this. I'm passionate about it because, we're in the no business. We're in a 90% failure business. And so while it's one of the most challenging fields, I think it's also one of the most rewarding. And so you go in there, you have to do the work, you have to trust your gut, you have to develop and live and die by your own taste and really be an extraordinary taskmaster, because not only are you having to take care of yourself, but crews of hundreds of people that when you walk onto the floor of a production or you walk into a room, they're looking at you from the top down to bring inspiration, to bring positivity, to create a culture where people want to get up every day and come to work.
Hmm. Hmm. Absolutely. Take us into the creative side of the business. Where do you find inspiration for the new shows that you come up with?
For me, inspiration can come from anywhere. My own personal experiences. I love to read, whether it's books, articles, short stories. Um, ideas pop in my head when I'm hiking. Writers bring me ideas. So, you never know where those ideas will come from. But I like to say I'm a study of human behavior, and I love interactions of people. So I keep myself open and I listen. I constantly and consistently want to learn about what's going on in the world and try to incorporate even the kernel of an idea can sprout a giant idea. So it's just really being open to what's going on around us in the world.
Listening is the key. I 100% agree with you there. Something that I've had to develop over time. I'm a great speaker. Who would have thought? But but listening is actually the key to developing a lot of the new programs that we come up with over the years.
I always
And
say our greatest voice is to listen.
yeah, 100%. 100% right. 100% right. You know, I consider you to be an expert problem solver. I know that's how you got to where you are today. I talk to college students all the time that they really need to develop that skill on how to problem solve because those are the people that are going to rise very quickly in an organization, and where everybody is going to go to them in order to solve problems. They're typically the highest paid people in an organization because they have that skill. So how
Yeah.
do we not dwell on the problem, which is what I see often, just complaining about the problem, and how do we actually get to actively finding solutions for the problem?
Yeah, I never really look at my journey being filled with problems. In our lives, we all have challenges, and that's a part of our growth. And I've never been one to dwell. I think it's an incredible waste of time. And I try to surround myself with the smartest people who can help solve those problems. And that's what, I always say it's the Bill Belichick way of managing a team. If we all show up and we all do our jobs, we'll be successful. And so there are times where, we'll problem solve together, where we have to, innovate and take certain risks. And but there are times where, that final decision has to be made by me. And if that is the case, I have to do it with very careful consideration and be very thoughtful about it and do what's best for that current situation that's in front of me and for the production as a whole. So to really sum it up in a sentence, complaining and looking at it as a problem is not a way to solve what's in front of you. You look at it optimistically and you look at all of the ways in which you can solve that particular problem, because that's what being a producer is. You're
Yep.
problem solving every minute of every day in a production. And I love that. I mean, that's a place I'm very comfortable in, but you really have to kind of shift the mindset and say, I am here because I'm the problem solver. I don't have time to dwell on it. I only have time to fix it.
And you recognize that you don't necessarily have all the answers, right? Surrounding yourself with really smart people is the key. And I think for me, that's also how Greek University has been successful. I surround myself with people who are way smarter than I am, PhD level folks that can really, really bring so much to the conversation. And they bring up stuff that I just literally can't see, right? And I think if you have a
Yeah,
diverse team of smart people, they will bring up all kinds of stuff that you never even considered.
that's right.
But the key is to like let go of your ego and just bring in really smart people.
You just stole what I was going to say. You
Yeah,
cannot lead with ego,
right.
because that's a killer. And
Mhm.
I don't bring ego into situations. It doesn't serve me. It doesn't serve anyone well. And I love celebrating other people when they come with a brilliant, innovative idea. Let's go. That's the way to really be in a collaborative, supportive, inspired, you know, um, production.
Yeah. Recognize those folks. I think it's important, especially in front of the group, because that's going to motivate them to continue to problem solve and to bring those contributions every single
Yeah.
time. You know, it just
Yeah.
seems to me that you've really achieved peace of mind in your life as you sit here today, in all of the chaos, maybe, or the
Yeah.
stress that you experienced early on in life. It just seems to me that you have this peace of mind today. How did you achieve that peace of mind?
I'm really a very grounded and grateful human. Yeah, I've had the good fortune of, really loving, supportive relationships, and family in my life. And, over time, it's taken me time in my life to learn to create healthy boundaries for myself. And so I've developed, varied practices that remind me, what my priorities are. So I always start my day with my rituals, of meditating, working out, physical activity is incredibly important to me. And taking time for me to journal and write down what my priorities are for the day, having nothing to do with my schedule, but just where is my mindset? How am I going to set myself up for a successful day? And even if I have 5 minutes or 10 minutes in the morning, they're mine.
Mm.
So we have to not feel guilty about putting ourselves first,
Yeah.
because everyone else will be better for it.
You're so right. You and I are alike in so many different ways, but I agree. You have to have those rituals first thing in the morning, the healthy rituals, whether that be meditation or journaling or working out or even just going for a walk. It doesn't have to be very complex. But I think if you do those things and you get into those rituals, you get into the right mindset of how you're going to start your day every single day, you're going to be productive. Great, great feedback there. I really like your rituals every single day. I think that's fantastic. Now,
Yes.
you're obviously out in LA, and we do love good food here at the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. That is my weakness, is eating really good food. So if I'm speaking at UCLA and I'm looking for a really great meal, where should I go in town in order to get a great meal?
You should come to my house and let me cook for you. I, first of all, I love to eat, but I love to cook. And
Yeah.
part of that is, because I'm a very conscious eater. And while I love incredible food, I also look at it as how I feel my body,
Mm.
and in LA, we are so lucky because we have a million options of vegan and gluten-free and vegetarian and, you name it, we can find it. And I'm mainly a pescatarian. So my go-tos are usually Mediterranean and
Mm.
Spanish influence.
Mhm.
I love, although it's not geographically desirable for UCLA, but I love Beval downtown,
Yes.
Ms. Lala in Sherman Oaks. Those are kind of my two faves in Mediterranean. And in Spanish, Love Madre, which is in West Hollywood. And
Mm.
there's a million of them. When I was shooting Hentified in Boyle Heights, I mean, we had the gift of every authentic restaurant serving us the most amazing food, and food trucks
Yeah.
would come by location. And I love authentic south of the border food. So if you see a food truck, belly up.
That's great advice. I was out in California for a conference a couple of months ago, and this one particular speaker, she happens to be vegan. And I tell you what, she took me to some of the greatest restaurants out in that area that are like vegan, and I had no idea. And she actually forced me to go vegan for like 3 days, like every single meal. I probably lost like 5 pounds easy, but I enjoyed every single meal, felt totally satisfied, and
Yeah.
it was just fantastic eating and really, really healthy. So it kind
I
of
will
gave me a
I
new
will tell
outlook.
you, there's so many times that, because my friends live on the scale from vegan to gluten-free to the meat eaters to the whole thing. And, I've made vegan cakes, I've made vegan pies, I've made vegan meals where if I didn't tell them, they
I have no
wouldn't.
idea. Yeah,
It's a
you would
really
have
healthy.
absolutely no idea. Absolutely right. I mean, we went to a pizza place that was vegan, and I was like, "This is delicious. This is great food." And with
Yeah.
all the toppings and everything, I was like, "This is just so wild." I don't get that. Living where I live in Nashville, I don't really get that. Where like it's a bunch of restaurants right next door to each other. They're all vegan and they can all survive just fine. But you can see that out
Yeah.
in LA, which is just so
You
great.
learn. I mean, you learn how to find the things that align with the way you eat. I was shooting a movie in the middle of the desert in Ouarzazate, Morocco. And the only thing you could get was lamb and beef, which I don't eat either one. And so the joke I said was for 8 weeks, I lived on Nutella, avocados, and naan, and any vegetable that I could get them to cook for me. So, sometimes it takes a little bit more work, but you find it.
You find it. Absolutely right. Well, listen, this has been so much fun. I know our audience has learned so much from you today. If our college student listeners, if they want to follow you on social media and they want to connect with you, where should they go to connect with you?
My name, TeriWeinberg. That's both my TikTok and my Instagram. And then please be on the lookout for my book that I hope will hit the presses soon. And yeah, I love sharing my life. I love sharing pearls of wisdom. So yeah, definitely follow me on Insta or TikTok. And I really appreciate you. This has been so fun, and I love what you're doing for college students. It's really an admirable, wonderful, engaging, fun thing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm really just trying to create that resource that I wish I had that when I was in college and just offer it for free to students and say, here it all is. And I'm so happy that you're writing the book too, because I think you have so much to share, so much wisdom to impart on younger folks, especially college students. So definitely to our listening audience, make sure that you follow Teri on Instagram and on LinkedIn. It's Teri Weinberg, TeriWeinberg. I'm sure she's going to make a big release as soon as that book is out. So I want you to go out and buy that book because I tell you what, it is going to have so many life lessons in there that is going to just shortcut success for you from just an incredible leader. And so it's been an honor to have you on the show, Teri. So thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure. Take good care, and we'll speak soon.
Will do. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this conversation with Teri, I want you to like it and share it with other college students on your campus. And we look forward to seeing you on another episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.